everybody, and welcome to the music rating, ranking, and reviewing podcast we like to call Music Meltdown, in which we rate, rank, and review any artist's discography, songs, musical topics, really whatever comes to mind. This is going to be an interesting one because I decided to deep dive into a band that I mostly didn't like before doing this. I figured it would be interesting to get sort of the full context and the sort of proper thought as to why I potentially don't like a group and maybe find some appreciation for them. That did not happen. I still really don't like this band. They just annoy me a lot of the time, and I'll get into that as I talk about the records. The group that I'm going to be discussing today is the White Stripes. Obviously, very popular, pretty much helped revolutionize the garage rock scene in the 2000s. Seven Nation Army is classic for a reason, and they have other hits and whatnot. There's only 6 records to their name. Most people tout them as one of the best rock groups of the 2000s. I just simply don't even get how people like them. That being said, however, it's only 6 records, so let's just go ahead and get into this. Try not to prolong it any longer than it needs to be. Number 6 for me, pretty easily, and the only record that I actively dislike by them is going to be Get Behind Me, Satan. Pretty much all of the evolution that I feel like they've done from stuff like the Stijl, White Blood Cells, and Elephant are just flushed, just gone on here. This album was an incredible letdown after thinking that the previous 2 were pretty decent. The songs here are just not great. Jack's voice is really rough across here, and across the catalog, he often oversings a lot to me, just getting to a point where, especially on this record, I can barely even understand what he's saying. I don't think this album sounds nearly as good as Elephant does. The guitars are way louder than they need to be. Meg's drums just simply don't sound very good. And just to hit it on the head now, Meg is simply just not a very good drummer, and by far one of the least interesting drummers that's been a part of a popular rock band like this for me. The only song here I really liked was the one that Meg sung, and that was like 35 seconds long. And I did think As Ugly as I Seem is a pretty solid cut, but songs like Blue Orchid, The Nurse, and My Doorbell are just truly bad in my opinion. It's a very low 2-star album that I didn't really enjoy much at all. Going up from there, I have their debut record being The White Stripes. Like I said before, going into this, never really liked the White Stripes, and just something about how they're propped up as being one of the greatest rock bands of our time just really turns me away because I don't get it from the music. And for the most part, this album is very bare bones. Unlike White Blood Cells or Elephant, pretty straight ahead Delta Blues. And while none of the material here is necessarily poor, most of the time it just simply bores me. Nothing before the song Do excited me much at all, but tracks like Do, Screwdriver, and I Fought Piranhas are all really well made and pretty decently performed. My favorite, however, was St. James Infirmary Blues, a killer piano-led song with Jack's best performance across the record. Almost reminded me similar of like an earlier Tom Waits song. My primary issue here just boils down to the number of tracks. 17 songs is just way too much. They're too short. They just go in, they go out, but they don't really have much staying power to them. As well across here and their next record, he's just trying to sound like Robert Plant way too much, and he's not even close to Robert Plant for me. Overall, it's another 2.5 stars. I think it's all right. There's a couple of pretty good songs interspersed here, but on the whole, it's just not a very noteworthy record, in my opinion. Going up from there, I have their final release, Icky Thump. And while this record has fewer overall highs in comparison to the debut, I think Icky Thump simply has more interesting instrumentation and has my favorite Jack White guitar playing across their catalog. It's showcased brilliantly on my favorite song here being the title track, Icky Thump. Past that, though, the songs are just decent, nothing bad, and there are a couple of cool ideas and sort of decent parts in here. But on the whole, I'm just not very enthralled by their sound and what they do. And I feel like while they're starting to expand a little bit on here, it's not to the point at which I really love it. It's still at 2.5 stars for me. It's just okay. Going up from there, once again, I'm going with their record, Stijl. It's not a huge step up and not a step down from the debut. Another 2.5 stars for me. I feel like the album is a bit more varied within its blues focus, but at the end of the day, it is still fairly bare bones blues. Um, Jack White is opening up a bit as a singer, but the guitar on this album, it's just too loud. The records came out during the loudness wars, and with how they're mixing the guitars, I can really hear it on some of these records, especially this one, and I'm like Blood Cells. It just overpowers the drums, especially on here. On the whole, though, the songs, once again, they're just decent. It's really only above the debut due to its fantastic opener. You're pretty good looking for a girl, reminding me of like an early Stones singing. Possibly my favorite song that they ever did. But there are other good cuts, like I'm Bound to Pack It Up, Sister Don't Know My Name, and Truth Doesn't Make a Noise. I'm still just not overly impressed or really that captivated by the playing. Yeah. Once again, 2.5 stars. It's all right. Going up from there, I have most people number one by them, but there's a pretty glaring reason as to why it's not for me. That being their record Elephant. This is a fairly conflicting record to me. I feel like the general sound of this it's closer to things I like. It's closer to almost like an indie rock sound while still having the clear garage lean into it. I think that Jack's voice is pretty good across here, and the playing has definitely improved. Although song wise, I think it's a pretty big step down from White Blood Cells. I hate Seven Nation Army. It's just one of my least favorite songs ever. I think it's incredibly annoying. I think it's overplayed to death, and I just simply don't get how it became just such a massive phenomenon that it was. Black Math is all right. There's some good material on here. There's No Home for Your Here is pretty good. I Want to Be the Boy That Warms Your Mother's Heart is probably one of my favorites, and You've Got Her in Your Pocket. Generally, though, most of the songs on here are just kind of all right. But my favorite one being In the Cold, Cold Night. This was a Meg sung track, and it's just really lovely. Makes me wish that she sang far more across the catalog, because I think it was really only on about 3 or 4 songs that she actually sung the leads. And I just like her a lot as a singer. So this record's on the border of 3 stars, but it's still just 2.5 stars for me. It's okay. There are good moments, but having Seven Nation Army is really the Achilles heel for me because I just hate that song. That being said, my favorite White Stripes record is going to be their album White Blood Cells. I think it's a pretty large step out from the Stijl. They really expand past the blues here, embracing the garage rock sound that had been with them the whole time. The guitar is still a bit too loud at points for me, but it's far less egregious than on Stijl. As well, Jack is really developing his own personality as a singer on here, stagnating from the Robert Plant worship. As well, the songs are just getting a lot better, I would say. While still inconsistent, there's a higher level of songs that I liked, ones I dislike. Hotel Yorba, Expecting, We're Going to Be Friends, Offend in Every Way, I Think I Smell a Rat, and This Protector all being very strong songs. On the whole, though, there's enough strong material to where I do, in some ways, enjoy this record. However, I think past the songs that I mentioned, there's plenty of filler on here. Once again, 17 songs, 16 songs, somewhere around there, and I don't like 6 or 7 of them. I can only have it at 3 stars. I think it's a solid improvement from everything else, but I just simply can't say with a good faith that it is a good album. That being said, I still just don't really get the White Stripes. I think that they're fine. They are kind of reinventing the blues and showcasing it to a majority of people in their time that just wouldn't have been as familiar with it. And I can respect them for that. But to be perfectly honest, I just don't see what's really all that remarkable, what really pushes them over the edge for so many people when I just simply prefer so many other bands, groups like The Strokes, and somebody like even like Hot Hot Heat, who was doing this sort of grunge rock and sort of indie rock and fusion. And I just simply don't think that the White Stripes are that great or that noteworthy for me. That being said, I'm very clearly on the minority of this. I know that there are so many people that absolutely love the White Stripes, and feel free to say why you love the White Stripes down below. I'd be more than willing to hear you out. That being said, I hope that you at least understood me and could get how I feel about the White Stripes. And with that being said, I hope that everybody has a great day.